Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theatre on the air in a radio play by Howard Koch, suggested by the H. G. Wells novel The War of the Worlds. Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Mercury Theatre and star of this broadcast, Orson Welles.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligence greater than men's, and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their domain over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which, by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space. Yet, across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that to our minds, as ours are to the beasts in the jungle, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 39th year of the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment. It was near the end of October. Business was better. The war scare was over. More men were back at work. Sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the Crossley service estimated that 32 million people were listening in on radios.
For the next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Nova Scotia, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeastern states, bringing a forecast of rain, accompanied by winds of light gale force. Maximum temperature 66, minimum 48. This weather report comes to you from the Government Weather Bureau. We now take you to the Meridian Room in the Hotel Park Plaza in downtown New York, where you will be entertained by the music of Ramon Roquello and his orchestra.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. From the Meridian Park Plaza in New York City, we bring you the music of Ramon Roquello and his orchestra. With a touch of the Spanish, Ramon Roquello leads off with La Comparsita.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving towards the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observations and describes the phenomena as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We now return you to the music of Ramon Roquello playing for you in the Meridian Room of the Park Plaza Hotel, situated in downtown New York.
Now, a tune that never loses favor, the ever-popular Stardust, Ramon Roquello and his orchestra.
Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the government meteorological bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with noted astronomer Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on the event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, New Jersey. We return you until then to the music of Ramon Raquello and his orchestra. We are now ready to take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, where Carl Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Princeton, New Jersey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carl Phillips speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. I'm standing in a large, semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sparkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanisms of a huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform peering through a giant lens. I ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen. During any delay that may arise during the interview, besides his ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
At any time, Mr. Phillips.
Professor, would you please tell the radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Mr. Phillips. A red disk swimming in a blue sea, transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be the point nearest the Earth. In opposition, as we call it.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Pearson?
Not canals, I can assure you, Mr. Phillips. Although that's the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the result of atmospheric conditions peculiar to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced, as a scientist, that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars.
I'd say the chances against it are 1,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for these gas eruptions occurring on the planet's surface at regular intervals?
Mr. Phillips, I cannot account for it.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from Earth?
Approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems like a safe enough distance. Thank you. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Someone has just handed Professor Pearson a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that we are in the observatory in Princeton, New Jersey, where we are interviewing the world-famous astronomer, Professor Pearson. One moment, please. Professor Pearson has just passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read this message to the listening audience?
Certainly, Mr. Phillips.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read to you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from a Dr. Gray of the National History Museum, New York. 9:15 Eastern Time. Seismographic register shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of the Astronomical Division. Professor, could this have anything to do with the disturbances observed on Mars?
Hardly, Mr. Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, we shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 10 minutes, we've been speaking to you from the observatory in Princeton, bringing you a special interview with Professor Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carl Phillips speaking. We are returning you now to our New York studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News, Toronto, Canada. Professor Morse of McGill University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from American observatories. Now, nearer home, comes a special announcement from Trenton, New Jersey. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a huge flaming object believed to be a meteorite fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey, 22 miles from Trenton. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of several hundred miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Elizabeth. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and we will have our commentator, Carl Phillips, give you a word description as soon as he can reach there from Princeton. In the meantime, we take you to the Hotel Marionette in Brooklyn, where Bobby Millett and his orchestra are offering a program of dance music. We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carl Phillips again at the Wilmot Farm, Grover Mills, New Jersey. Professor Pearson made the 11 miles here from Princeton in 10 minutes. Well, I hardly know where to begin to paint for you a word picture of this strange scene before my eyes, like something out of a modern Arabian Nights. Well, I just got here. Yes, this must be it. The thing is directly in front of me, half buried in a vast pit. It must have struck at terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree it must have struck on the way down. From what I can see of the object itself, it doesn't look very much like a meteor, at least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has the diameter of... Professor Pearson, what would you say?
What's that?
What would you say? What is the diameter?
About 30 yards.
About 30 yards. The metal sheath is... well, I've never seen a color quite like it. It's yellowish white. Curious spectators now are pushing close to the object in spite of the effort.
What's going on? Can we see?
Can I see it?
What is that?
Wait, it
is
looks
that?
pretty cool. What is
What's
it?
happening
To one
here?
side,
What's going
please.
on? I'm confused.
One side there, one side.
Come on, let me see.
While the policemen are pushing the crowd back, here's Mr. Wilmot, owner of the farm here. He may have some interesting facts to add. Mr. Wilmot, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped in your backyard? Step closer, Mr. Wilmot. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Wilmot.
Well, I was listening to the radio.
Closer and louder, please.
Pardon me?
Louder, please, and closer.
Yes, sir. I was listening to the radio and kind of drowsing. That professor fellow was talking about Mars, so I was half dozing and half...
Yes, Mr. Wilmot. Then what happened?
As I was saying, I was listening to the radio kind of
Yes,
halfway.
Mr. Wilmot. And then you saw something.
Not first off, I heard something.
And what did you hear?
It was a hissing sound like this. Kind of like a 4th of July rocket.
Yes, then what?
Turned my head out the window, and I would have swore I was to sleep dreaming.
Then what?
I seen a kind of greenish streak, and then zingo! Something smacked the ground and knocked me clear out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mr. Wilmot?
Well, I ain't quite sure. I reckon I was kind of riled.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmot, thank you.
Want me to tell you some more?
No, that's quite all right. That's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Mr. Wilmot, owner of the farm here where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars are parked in the field behind us. Police try to rope off the railway leading to the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. Cars' headlights through an enormous spot in the pit where this thing is half buried. Some of the more daring souls now venture to the edge. Their silhouettes stand out against the metal sheen. One man wants to touch the thing. He's having an argument with a policeman. The policeman wins. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but now it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've caught it already on your radio. Listen. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to be coming from inside the object. I'll move the microphone nearer. Now we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it now? Oh, Professor Pearson.
Yes, Mr. Phillips?
Can you tell us the meaning of the scraping noise inside this thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I see. Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, not found on the Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in a meteorite. This being is smooth and, as you can see, of cylindrical shape.
Just a minute. Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific. The end of the thing is beginning to flake off. It's beginning to rotate like a screw. The thing must be hollow.
Is it moving?
Is
What's
it
it doing?
Look, the darn thing's unscrewing.
Oh my gosh!
What's happening?
Stay
Red
back!
hot.
Go back. He's off.
Top's loose.
Top loose.
Look out, guys!
Look out!
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's crawling outside of the hollow top. Someone or something. I can see peering out of the black hole 2 luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be... Good heavens, something's ringing up out of the shadows like a gray snake. Now there's another one and another. They look like tentacles to me. There, I can see the thing's body. It's large as a bear, and it glistens like wet leather, but the face, Ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent. The mouth is V-shaped, with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and shake. The monster, or whatever it is, can hardly move. It's weighed down by possibly gravity? Or something. The thing's raising up. The crowd pushes back. They've seen plenty. This is the most extraordinary experience. I can't find words. I'll pull the microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to hold on the descriptions as I get a new position. Hold on, will you please? I'll be back in a minute.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Wilmeth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. We now return you to Carl Phillips at Grover's Mill.
Ladies and gentlemen, am I on? Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back at the stone wall that adjoins Mr. Wilmot's garden. From here I can get a sweep of the whole thing. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk. As long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up cordons in front of the pit. About 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back. They've seen enough. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain is conferring with someone. I can't tell who it is. Oh, yes, it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted. The professor moves around to one side, studying the object, while the captain and 2 policemen advance with something in their hands. I can't see... I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole. A flag of truce. If the creature knows what that means, what anything means... Wait, something's happening! A humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What is that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror. It leaps right at the advancing man. It strikes them head on. Good Lord, they're turning into flame. Now the whole field has caught fire. The wood, the barns, the gas tank of the automobiles, it's everywhere. It's coming this way, about 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field's transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a special bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet. We now continue with our piano interlude.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been handed a message that came in from Grover's Mill by telephone. Just a moment. At least 40 people dead, including 6 state troopers, lie dead in a field east of the village of Grover's Mill. Their bodies burned and distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you will hear will be that of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton, New Jersey.
I have been requested by the governor of New Jersey to place the counties of Mercer and Middlesex as far west as Princeton and east to Jamesburg under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area except by special pass issued by state or military authorities. 4 companies of state militia are proceeding from Trenton to Grover's Mill and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you.
You have just been listening to General Montgomery Smith, commanding the state militia at Trenton. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Grover's Mill are coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawled back into their pit and made no attempts to prevent the efforts of the firemen to recover the bodies and extinguish the fire. Combined fire departments of Mercer County are fighting the flames, which menace the entire countryside. We have been unable to establish any contact with our mobile units at Grover's Mill, but we hope to be able to return you there at the earliest possible moment. In the meantime, we take you. Just one moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, where he has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his explanation of the calamity. The next voice you will hear is that of Professor Pearson, brought to you by Direct Wire. Professor Pearson?
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give you no authoritative information either to as to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to this mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's odd to have that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. This is my guess that in some way they are able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects the beam of light. That's my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a bulletin from Trenton. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carl Phillips has been identified in a Trenton hospital. Now, here's another bulletin from Washington, D.C., Office of the Director of the National Red Cross. Reports 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the state militia stationed outside Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Here's a bulletin from the state police, Princeton Junction. The fires at Grover's Mill and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit and no signs of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special statement from Mr. Harry McDonald, Vice President in charge of operations.
We have received a request from the militia at Trenton to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the state militia at Trenton.
We take you now to the field headquarters of the state militia near Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the state militia now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Grover's Mill. Situation arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object, which lies in the pit directly below our position, is surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry. without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns. All cause for alarm, if such ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. The things, whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads up above the pit. I can see there are hiding places plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures can scarcely stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the lights. It looks almost like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke in the woods bordering the Millstone River, probably fire started by campers. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. Quick thrust and it'll all be over. Now, wait a minute. I see something on top of the cylinder. No, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmouth farm. 7,000 armed men closing in on an old metal tube. Wait, that wasn't a shadow. Something moving. Solid metal, kind of shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. Wait, it's standing on legs, actually rearing up on a sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees and the searchlights are on it. Hold on!
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from Mars. The battle which took place tonight at Grover's Mill has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by any army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine from the invaders from Mars. 120 known survivors. The rest strewn over the battle area from Grover's Mill to Plainsboro, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster or burned to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of the middle section of New Jersey and has effectively cut the state through its center. Communication lines are down from Pennsylvania to the Atlantic Ocean. Railroad tracks are torn and service from New York to Philadelphia discontinued, except routing of some of the trains through Allentown and Phoenixville. Highways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and Army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have swelled Camden, Philadelphia, and Trenton. It is estimated to twice their normal population. At this time, martial law prevails throughout New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. We take you now to Washington for a special broadcast on the national emergency. The Secretary of the Interior.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to press upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
You have just heard the Secretary of the Interior speaking from Washington. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We are informed the central portion of New Jersey is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and electrical equipment. Here's a special bulletin from New York. Cables received in English, French, German scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on planet Mars. Majority voice opinion that enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. Attempts made to locate Professor Pearson of Princeton, who has observed Martians at close range. It is feared he was lost in the recent battle. Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report 3 Martian machines visible above treetops, moving north toward Somerville with population fleeing ahead of them. Heat ray not in use. Although advancing at express train speed, invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countryside. However, they will stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society. Here's a bulletin from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Coon hunters have stumbled on a second cylinder similar to the first embedded in the Great Swamp 20 miles south of Morristown. Army field pieces are proceeding from Newark to blow up second invading unit before cylinder can be opened and fighting machine rigged. They are taking up position in the foothills of Watchung Mountains. Another bulletin from Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report Martian machines, now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees, and their evident haste to form conjunction with their allies south of Morristown. Machines also sighted by telephone operator east of Middlesex within 10 miles of Plainsfield. Here's a bulletin from Winstonfield, Long Island. Fleet of Army bombers carrying heavy explosives flying north in pursuit of enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep speeding enemy in sight. Just a moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we've run special wires to the artillery line in adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing enemy. First, we take you to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery located in the Watchung Mountains.
Range 32 meters.
32 meters.
Projection 39 degrees.
39 degrees.
Fire.
"140 yards to the right, sir."
Shift range 31 meters.
31 meters.
Projection 37 degrees.
37 degrees.
Fire.
"A hit, sir. We got the tripod of one of them. They've stopped. The others are trying to repair it."
Quick, get the range. Shift 30 meters.
30 meters.
Projection 27 degrees.
27 degrees.
Fire.
"Can't see the shell lancers. They're letting off a smoke."
What is it?
"A black smoke. They're moving this way, lying close to the ground. It's moving fast."
Put on gas masks. Get ready to fire. Shift 24 meters.
24 meters.
Projection 24 degrees.
24 degrees.
Fire.
"Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming nearer."
Get the range.
23 degrees. Meters.
23 meters.
23 meters.
Projection 22 degrees.
22 degrees.
Army bombing plane B-843 off Bayonne, New Jersey. Lieutenant Vaught commanding 8 bombers reporting to Commander Fairfax, Lingham Field. This is Vaught reporting to Commander Fairfax, Lingham Field. Enemy tripod machines now in sight, reinforced by 3 machines from the Morrison cylinder. 6 altogether. 1 machine already crippled, believed hit by a shell from Army gun in Watchung Mountains. Guns now appear silent. A heavy black fog hanging close to the earth, of extreme density. Nature is unknown. No sign of heat ray. Enemy now turns east, crossing Passaic River into the Jersey marshes. Another straddles the Pulaski Skyway. Evident objective is New York City. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The machines are close together now and we're ready to attack. Planes circling, ready to strike. 1,000 yards and we'll be over the first. 800 yards. 600. 400. 200. There they go. Giant arm raised. Green flash. They're spraying us with flame. 2,000 feet. Engines are giving out. No chance to release the bombs. One thing left. Drop on them, plane and all. We're driving on the first one. Now the engine's gone. 8.
This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. Come in, please.
This is Langham Field. Go ahead.
8 Army bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Jersey Flats. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed, 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke
Newark, New Jersey.
in the direction of...
This is Newark, New Jersey. Warning, poisonous black smoke coming in from Jersey marshes. Reaches South Street. Gas masks useless. Urge population to move to open areas. Automobiles use route 7, 23, 24. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now spreading over Raven Boulevard.
2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling 8X3R. Come in, please.
This is 8X3R. Coming back at 2X2L.
Reception. How's reception? Hey, please? Where are you, 8x3R? What's the matter with you?
I am speaking from the roof of the Broadcasting Building, New York City. I am speaking from the roof of the Broadcasting Building, New York City. The bells you hear are ringing to warn the people to evacuate the city as the Martians approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. Hutchinson River Parkway still kept open for motor traffic. Avoid bridges to Long Island. Hopelessly jammed. All communication with Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army wiped out. Artillery, Air Force, everything wiped out. This may be the last broadcast. We'll stay here till the end. People are holding service below us in the cathedral. Now I look down the harbor, all manner of boats, overloaded with fleeing population, pulling out from docks. Streets are all jammed, noising crowds like New Year's Eve in the city. Wait a minute. Enemy now inside above the palisades. Five great machines. First one is crossing the river. I can see it from here, wading the Hudson like a man wading through a brook. A bulletin's handed to me. Martian cylinders are falling all over the country. One outside Buffalo, one in Chicago, St. Louis. Seem to be time and space. Now, the first machine reaches the shore. He stands watching, looking over the city. He's still cowlish-headed even with the skyscrapers. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of new towers on the city's west side. Now, they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now. Smoke comes out, black smoke, drifting over the city. People in the streets see it now. They're running towards this river, thousands of them, dropping like rats. Now, the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached Times Square. People trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now, the smoke's crossing 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue, 100 yards away. It's 50 feet.
2x2L calling CQ. 2x2L calling CQ. 2x2L calling CQ. New York, isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone? 2x2L.
You're listening to a CBS presentation of Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air in an original dramatization of The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. The performance will continue after a brief intermission. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System. The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, starring Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the Air.
As I set down these notes on paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living person on Earth. I've been hiding in this empty house near Griver's Mill, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life, a life that has no continuity with the present. Feared of existence of a lonely derelict who pencils his words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Richard Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with the professor who had a piercing, and who, on the night of October 30, glimpsed through his telescope an orange splash of light on a distant planet. My wife, my colleagues, my students, my books, my observatory, my world. Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Richard Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no human hands left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I tell myself I shall preserve human history between the covers of this little book that was meant to record the movements of the stars. But to write, I must live, and to live, I must eat. I find moldy bread in the kitchen, and an orange not too spoiled to swallow. I keep watch at the window. From time to time, I catch sight of the Martian above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil. But at length, there's a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a Martian mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in the corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house. Exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. It's morning. Morning! Sun! Streams in the window! The black cloud of gas has lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as though a black snowstorm has passed over them. I venture from the house. I make my way to a road. No traffic. Here and there, a wrecked car, baggage overturned, a blackened skeleton. I push on north. For some reason, I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them, and I keep a careful watch. I've seen the Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of the trees, I am ready to fling myself flat against the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October chestnuts are ripe. I fill my pockets. I must keep alive. Today, as I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate road, finally, I notice a living creature, a small red squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him in wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at that moment, the animal and I share the same emotion, the joy of finding another living being. I pushed on north. I found dead cows in a brackish field. Beyond the charred ruins of a dairy, the silo remained standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north. Next day, I came to a city vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off, as if a giant hand sliced off its highest towers with a capricious sweep of his hand. I reached the outskirts. I found Newark, undemolished, but humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something crouching in the doorway. I made a step towards it, and it rose up and became a man armed with a large knife.
Oh. Where did you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago from Princeton.
Princeton, huh? That's near Grover's Mill.
Yes.
Grover's Mill. There's no food here. This country is mine. All this down to the end of the river. There's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people.
What was that? Did you hear something just then?
Only a bird. A live bird.
You get to know that birds have shadows these days. Say, we're in the open here. Let's crawl into this doorway and then talk.
Have you seen any Martians?
Nah, they've gone over to New York. At night, the sky is alive with their lights. Just as if people were still living in it. By daytime, you can't see them. 5 days ago, they carried something big across the flats from the airport. I believe they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
And it's all over with humanity. Stranger, there's still you and I. 2 of us left.
They got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars, they're probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost 1 machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You're in a uniform.
Yeah? What's left of it? I was in the militia. National Guard. That's good. It wasn't any more war than there's war between men and ants.
And we're eatable ants. I found that out. What would they do with us?
I've thought it all out. Right now, we're caught as we're wanted. The Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd of us on the run. But they won't keep doing that. They'll begin catching us. Systematic like. Keeping the best and storing us in cages and things. They haven't begun on us yet.
Not begun?
Not begun. All that's happened so far is because we don't have enough sense to keep quiet. Bothering them with guns and such stuff is then running off in crowds instead of rushing around blind, we've got to fix ourselves up. Fix ourselves up in the way that things are now. Cities, nations, civilizations, progress. Done.
But if that's so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for 1,000,000 years. And no nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, I guess the game's up.
And what is there left?
Life. That's what? I want to live. Yeah, so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. And I don't mean like caught either. And tamed and fattened and bred like an ox.
What are you gonna do?
I'm going on. Right under their feet. I got a plan. We men, as men, are finished. We don't know enough. We gotta learn plenty before we've got a chance. And we've got to live. And keep free while we learn, see? I've thought it all out, see?
Tell me, the rest.
Well, it isn't all of us that were made for wild beasts, and that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. All these little office workers that used to live in these houses, they'd be no good. They haven't any stuff to them. They just used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them running wild to catch their commuter trains in the morning for fear they'd get canned if they didn't. Running back at night, afraid they won't be in time for dinner. Lives insured, and a little invested in case of accidents. And on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. The Martians will be a godsend for those guys. Nice roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. After a week or so, chasing about the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
You bet I have. And that isn't all. These Martians, We'll make pets of some of them. Train them to do tricks. Who knows? Get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be slaughtered. And some, maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
No, that's impossible. No human being.
Yes, they will. There's men who will do it gladly. If one of them ever comes after me, why?
In the meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we to live when the Martians own the Earth?
I've got it all figured out. We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under New York are miles and miles of them. The main ones are big enough for anybody. Then there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You begin to see. And we'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weak ones. That rubbish, out.
And you meant me to go.
Well, I gave you a chance, didn't I?
We won't quarrel about that. Go on.
And we've got to make safe places for us to stay in, see? Get all the books we can. Science books. That's where men like you come in, see? We'll raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. It may not be so much we have to learn before. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off. Heat rays, right and left. And not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them. But men. Men who have learned the way how. It may even be in our time. Gee, imagine having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. We turn it on Martians. We turn it on men. We bring everybody down to their knees.
That's your plan?
You and me. And a few more of us, we'd own the world.
I see.
What's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to your world. Goodbye, stranger. At the parting with the artilleryman, I came at last to the hall and tunnel. I entered that silent tube, anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Hudson. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. I reached 14th Street, and there again was black powder and several bodies, and an even though ominous smell from the gratings of the cellars of some of the houses. I wandered up the 30s and the 40s. I stood alone on Times Square. I caught sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in his jaws and a pack of starving mongrels at his heels. He made a wide circle around me as though he feared I might prove a fresh competitor. I walked up Broadway in the direction of that strange powder, past silent shop windows, displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks, past the captive theater, silent and dark, past a shooting gallery where a row of empty guns faced an arrested line of wooden ducks. Near Columbus Circle, I noticed models of the 1939 motor cars in the showrooms facing empty streets. From over the top of the General Motors building, I watched a flock of black birds circling in the sky. I hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine, standing somewhere in Central Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. An insane idea! I rushed recklessly across Columbus Circle and into the park. I climbed a small hill above the pond at 60th Street. From there, I could see, standing in a silent row along the mall, 19 of those great metal titans, their cows empty, their great steel arms hanging listlessly from their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabited those machines. Suddenly, My eyes were attracted to the immense flock of black birds that hovered directly below me. They circled to the ground, and there, before my eyes, stark and silent, laid the Martians, with the hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from the dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in the laboratories, it was found that they were killed by putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. Slain, after all men's defenses had failed, but a humbless thing that God, in his wisdom, put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deep of space, no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further. Dim and wonderful is a vision I have conjured up in my mind of life spreading slowly from this little seabed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastness of the sidereal space. But that is a remote dream. It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us, is the future ordained, perhaps. Stranger now it seems to sit in my peaceful study at Princeton writing this down, this last chapter of the record begun at the deserted farm in Brewer's Mill. Strange to see from my window the university spires, dim and blue, through an April haze. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see the young people strolling on the green, where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of a bruised earth. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museum where the disassembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall when I first saw it, bright and clean-cut, hard and silent, under the dawn of that last great day. This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen, out of character to assure you that the War of the Worlds have no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night. So we did the next best thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CVS. You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and that both institutions are still open for business. So goodbye, everybody, and remember the terrible lesson you learned tonight. The grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch. If your doorbell rings and there's nobody there, that was no Martian. It's Halloween.
Tonight, the Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations coast to coast have brought you The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, the 17th in its weekly series of dramatic broadcasts featuring Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.